I'm Jim Collison, live from the Gallup campus here and in Studio B. This is Gallup's Called to Coach, recorded on October 19th, 2018. Called to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you do have questions during this live webcast, we have a chat room that's available for you right below the main video window if you see it down there. You can, bottom left-hand corner, it says log in, choose that button, choose the guest account, take your name out or take the guest name out, put your name in, take those numbers out as well. Hit submit and you are in. You can also use any of the other available social media platforms if you want to log in with that account, that'll work. And the important thing is we'll be taking your questions live during the program. If you're listening to the recorded version or have questions about anything related, strengths related, send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. We'll get that routed to the right person for you. And don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center, just gallupstrengthscenter.com for all your CliftonStrengths coaches, coaching resources and training needs, including the new, I'm always hesitant to say this because these things are time shifted, right? You might be listening to this 2 years from now, but the new All 34 report, which will be launching late next week. And so we're pretty excited about that. Available on your account at the Gallup Strengths Center, gallupstrengthscenter.com. Don't forget, you can also catch the video in both streaming and downloadable audio of all these programs. We have hundreds of hours of them available for you. For offline listening, we call that podcasting. You can get it on your phone automatically. You can get all the links to be able to do that, including Spotify, which is coming up here in the next, probably next week, be available for you on Spotify. You can get those links, coaching.gallup.com. Our guest today is Dr. Peter Block. He is a Chief Impact Architect. I love that title at E2Grow. He structures programs that deliver the biggest impact to organizations, matching their business needs to the execution of coaching and communication interviews. Peter, that sounds super important. Welcome to Called to Coach.
Thanks so much, Jim. Pleasure to be here.
You bet. Let's start with the basics because everybody's going to want to know who you are and what your top 5 are. So give us a little bit more background, where you're currently at, a little bit about you and your top 5.
So I'm a achiever, learner, relator, maximizer, and focus, following the individualization, futuristic, significance, and a few others. What we do, me and my team, is truly assist organizations to transform their organizational culture from, those 9 circles of hell to a thriving workplace. Which essentially means truly embedding strengths into daily conversations and changing the mindsets of the managers. So they think, about people as people, not as widgets. And we do that sort of organization-wide whenever we engage with the client. It has to really bring an impact to the organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a good, I think you guys have caught on that the key through organizations is through their leadership, and that you've got to get a really culture or company-wide change going on for that to really make an impact. Before we kind of dig into that a little bit, I would like to hear about how you got to where you're at today from what led you to E2Grow and your own business and doing these things. How'd that journey get there?
Well, it started in 1976 when I was born. Just kidding.
Man, you're young. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I think in all my career, I was associated or I was involved in bringing change into organizations, implementing different systems like CRMs or changing the processes in the companies where I was involved when we were growing and so on. And all that, connected to some progress. And including all my roles were basically associated to actually some progress and change, which was in some companies and teams super frustrating. And in some companies and teams, it was really, really great. So back, 10, 15 years ago, that was that kind of an enigma, how to really unlock the power of teams and power of people. And it really, the more and more I worked with teams, it was evident that it's just, the people game. So whatever the issue is and the progress or the vision that we want to achieve, it's about people. So, I came across that Gallup in 2014, actually, and it became clear that there is, something that a person can hold on to, in a sense of, okay, there is needs that we know, through Q12, that people sort of need to have satisfied in a way, right? And there is a thing called strengths, which is basically focusing really on how people can thrive and so on. So all that connected, it became really clear to me that this is the solution sort of for the future. Even though we started and then with few people, which were Borut and Jaka, which were part of my team in the beginning, we started thinking about this and how can we bring this to the organizations, and being on the other side, or had been on the other side as a client or in the role of a consultant, it was extremely sort of important for me to solve the issue of stickiness, right? How can we ensure that whatever we bring in will actually stay there? There's nothing more frustrating than having like a workshop with a team, whatever, a leadership team or I don't know, product management team or marketing team or whatever, sales team, and have them truly inspired, right, in that one moment in time, and then coming back 2 weeks later and there's like no sign that you were ever there. So that was one of the things that we were really concerned about from the beginning, because CEOs that we talk to, or the HR people and so on, they're used to this, whatever flavor of the month or a year coming in. So we knew we had to solve this issue of how can we truly embed and making it stick. So that's what we started solving. We knew strengths and Q12 and so on. So it's about the leadership development and how people in the organization really change their thinking. But it has to be like a critical mass of people, and that change needs to stick. So that was the driver, and we know 90% of knowledge gained through training and so on is lost within first 6 months. And I think 50% is gone, like when people are leaving that room where they were for that sort of time of training, right? And I think that's the real big issue that we sort of really focused on solving, and this is what we sort of drive our programs through.
I think your education plays into. I introduced you as a PhD, and in your education, you've had a lot of education. You don't get that by accident, and I think your education leads you to kind of think through these systems that help people stay engaged. Can you talk a little bit about your education first, and then how you're applying that through your own systems today?
Probably that was a learner in overdrive and maximizing or staying in the academia for a few years and maximizing the experiences sort of in private life. I've traveled around the world and so on. So staying in academia sort of allowed me to do that. But there was another sort of option there as well, which was being really exposed to anything new and really to the best organizations. It was easier to get into organizations, and I worked with Samsung in Korea, for example, worked with several corporations in the US, in that disguise of a sort of university professor, or with that sort of shield, and this is where I learned sort of the true sort of pains of corporations, probably early in the beginning. So that was one of the things why I loved being there, because it allowed me to get into sort of corporations through some research and so on. But yes, maybe perhaps the systematic approach to things, what will lead to something else. I wouldn't sort of tie it just to the education. We have people in the team. We have a nurse in the team, a male nurse, right? Tomasz, he's an educated nurse, and he's an awesome coach. How he drives the the workshops, the group workshops, is just amazing with his communication and so on. So I wouldn't say it's just about that. And yes, we as a team, we sort of structure it together.
Ricardo in the chat room, you mentioned a word stickiness, and he says the difference between an event and a process. If the organization treats it like an event, it's like going to a concert, right? You listen and you sing some songs, and about a week after the concert, you kind of forget about it. And you alluded to that in a statement. When you look at, and you've alluded to this on our Facebook groups as well. Sometimes we get so excited about an organization just taking the assessment for the first time, and maybe you get an opportunity to do a strengths discovery. And you've really, in the times I've talked to you, you have this real passion around driving it beyond the first discovery session for impact. Let's flesh that out a little bit more. When you think about, this passion for getting beyond the first assessment, that's not the goal. That's really just the beginning step. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys are seeing that process, and then maybe some of the best of it, and we'll kind of unpack some of the work that you guys are doing?
Okay. That's a really good metaphor, process, and how can we enjoy that sort of music much longer. We see, for example, strength discovery or group sessions, we only see them as a sort of the first step of perhaps just raising a bit of awareness and generating some of the buy-in, parts of the buy-in for the whole transformation. So it's just we just had like a national lottery case where here in Slovenia, so all of the employees were joining the same, so they were all part of that same huge work group session sort of that we had, and it was all part of just to create awareness of that there is something in us which is great, and that we can use to be different. And that was just like 4 or 5 months ago, and that was just sort of a prelude, an intro to the whole project now that we started, and it's a 2-year project with 2 phases which will happen, and so yeah, that was just a sort of piece in the whole project where we create an awareness where people just get excited and so on. Then the real work starts, right? Because we know that just getting people excited is not enough, right? So people will not change. Like if you go, you can be excited over a person like a street shop or seller coming into your house and selling you a vacuum cleaner for 10,000 US. And you would get excited over that, right? But do you really need it, and so on. So that's the issue of I think we see that the same thing, right? You can get excited, but then people don't really change. They might commit, even they might have really great plans, right? But then Monday comes, and everything is just the same. So essentially, yes, there is tools, right, that we use that can help in change. So strengths and mindset around that, but the real work and the real process of embedding strengths into the culture, which actually means just changing the behaviors, everyday behaviors, and that is a routine, an issue of changing existing routines. As we know, around 70% of what we do in a day is routinized, right? So I don't really think. Which also means, especially when I'm frustrated, if I'm an achiever, right, and I'm frustrated over some tasks, I will not think about the other person. Most definitely not. If a CEO is calling me and I need to, submit something in next 15 minutes, I'll just run with my achiever across everyone, right? So that's the real work, how to change those routines, and this is what the whole basically process entails. Then, how can we change those? And making it really efficient, and doing that on organization-wide scale, because it's not enough that you work only with one team or a manager. That's one of the things probably that are also one of the, I think we saw crucial things or barriers where organizations are trying to do this is, let's do this little bit of a pilot, and we'll do this one, and then we'll see how this unfolds. And maybe we'll just ask people at the end of the day, was this, how did you find this? Were you inspired by this? But then, have we asked them how did they change? And that's one thing, right? The whole change thing. But the other one also, right? If I do a little bit, if I extinguish a fire in this one corner, right, and then move to another corner, the other corner will catch fire extremely soon, like in a second, right? Again, so it's not possible to do it. What we see, in one corner and then another corner and moving from one team to another. But what we found, it really, if you want to do it organization-wide, it has to be like you have to reach this critical mass, and everyone needs to talk differently, start talking differently at the same time. So it becomes more of a, I think, scalability issue then, and how can we bring, what do we bring through a series of coaching sessions and individual coaching sessions and group sessions, and how do we say, okay, this is one phase where we'll do a few of these interventions, right? 5, 6, 7 interventions combining individual and group, but how can we unroll this with hundreds of managers at the same time? Because we need to cover all of them at the same time. If it's just in one department, then it becomes your thing and our thing, and it just doesn't catch fire, right?
Oftentimes when you're trying to get that message into an organization, the hardest part is that pitch. How have you found? How are you making the inroads? How are you making, and every situation is different, and I get that, and there's no one size fits all. But if you were talking to a new coach who really wants to do this kind of work, and you give them some advice on, hey, here's how I kind of reach. How do you reach some of those companies to be able to do that pitch?
I think it's the answer is in how can I make myself relevant to the person I'm talking to. And the relevance doesn't come from, oh gosh, look, I'm a certified, strengths coach, with all due respect, and we just love the certifications and all this, right? But this is not the answer, because if you step into the CEO's shoes or HR shoes, right? They've tried everything. They've invested millions of dollars into the leadership training. They have their own initiatives, their own new strategies of what their culture looks like and all this, right? So there has been, you cannot go in and say, okay, this is like a holy grail strengths. I'm now a certified strengths coach and this will solve your problem. So the relevance comes, I think, from that essentially promising that you will bring a change, but this change is not, everyone will talk strengths. The change is actually in the results that they're after. So whatever the issue is, right, the advice would probably be, find out what the issue of that person is. And the issue becomes usually very personal, sort of, right? So I always try to think through, what is this, like a new role for the CEO? Maybe he's a new in that position, right? Maybe he would just like to see or prove that he can bring impact. Maybe it's, I don't know, they maybe change, the company maybe changed the strategy, right? Or they just implemented a new strategy, or there's people who are leaving, right, the company, talent retention issue, which is a huge deal. We just had hundreds of people, which is quite a big deal, in a company with 5,000 people, for example. And we just had, in one of the Slovenian ones, we just had hundreds of people leaving a huge company, which is an issue, right? So making that connection to the business results in that pitch, and essentially what I truly think, what we as coaches, or when even in the organization, right? If I'm an inside organization, like a strengths champion and so on, want to drive this throughout the organization, we know basically that, I think we know that all of the issues that we have at the moment, or the company has at the moment, are connected to people issues, right? So that's one thing that I always say, whatever your issue is, whatever your challenge is, the people sort of, and managers will actually be able to solve it. Now it's just, how do we make this connection, right? And we had companies who tried to, there was one we needed to reduce number of deaths, so people dying in their warehouse because the procedures weren't followed. And it was just, at the end of the day, it's nothing. There was no procedures or people can read and all that. It was not on the agenda of that daily conversation. And that meant that the person in charge, the warehouse sort of shift manager, they needed basically to change those conversations. Or we had companies want to increase talent retention and so on. So it all depends on that, and be able to make that connection from the business results and to this people behavior, right? So that, I think, is the most crucial bit. And yeah, that's the relevance there. And the other bit for the relevance is actually prove that it will stick. So how you're different, right? And the difference actually comes from this stickiness, right? They've tried everything, right? We come into companies where they just had their insights training, where they just had their DISC, where they just had their SDI, MBTI, whatever, right? You name it, they've got it. They've probably tried it once, right? But the real difference is in that stickiness, right? How can I prove them that I'm doing much more than just, training, and how will I show them that people will actually change, and how will I measure this? Also committing to that change, right? Many cases that the companies that we work with, we actually, especially in the beginning, we had to commit to really tangible results so that people, even companies, started trusting us. So it was like you get all or nothing if you deliver against these 5 business KPIs. And I think this trust in or truly believing that solving this people equation and having people thrive and making these workplaces where people actually thrive, and empowering them through strengths and so on, and that changes the mindset of people, and that leads to the business results, period. That really leads to business results. But that work of changing the mindset and driving people or managers to actually believe in this is that part of the program that's probably the hard work, or that needs to be done, not just sort of in form of training or workshop. You're there in Europe, and oftentimes CliftonStrengths kind of gets pigeonholed as that's an American thing, and yet you've been pretty successful with it there in Europe, working it well there. Do you run up against any resistance it having, maybe having some American overtones or being labeled that way? Do you kind of run into any of that kind of resistance? And be honest if you do. No, not really. I was thinking about it. We don't get that. Sometimes in the beginning, we might get, especially when people have not received their reports yet, right? So when it was only communicated, and we do pay a lot of attention to the whole setup, right? So it's not just individual coaching session, and we need to pull those off with hundreds of managers at the same same month. Individual coaching session 1, 2, and so on. But in this setup of the whole, how we communicate and who needs to communicate what and so on, and we always involve the first manager needs to be the one that communicates, why you are going into this program and what kind of benefits do you see. So they have to be, they have to articulate it and so on. So and we coach them before they even, start communicating this. We sort of coach people, their managers, how to present this program and how to generate the buy-in so that people don't resist. And I think that perhaps we get that question early in the beginning before they receive the reports. So when people start talking about, we're going to be focusing more on talents, on people, on good things, on what we are great at, there might be some deliberatives and intellections, maybe, and inputs, right? That might, maybe they don't have enough information, they haven't thought about it, or they just think, it's American thing to overpraise, sort of. But that's just like very, very, very little proportion. So we don't get that comment often. So it's not really an issue at all. What we talk, if we still talk about the how do we communicate, or how do we pitch these kind of programs, and that works for, you know, either you're a strengths champion in a company trying to run this, and we've met plenty of you know, people who are really trying to run these org-wide programs inside corporations like Volvo, Pfizer, with some Accenture guys and so on, and we know what the pains are there. And it's the same thing, right? You have to pitch that same issue, either if you're external or internal, fight for the same resources. It's maybe even more difficult for internal ones. But yeah, the pitching, I think, and that, right? We always talk about the how useful this will be, and whenever we communicate, it really comes to that individual communication, one-on-one buy-in, because I mean, we need to be aware that these people, we're like coaching an organization. You're not coaching an individual. When we are working as coaches with individuals, they usually come to us. They know they want a coach, right? They are ready for a change. Now, organization is a completely different thing, right? There might be a few, 5% of people who would like to be coached. 95 would be like, let's just preserve whatever there is. So people don't come in freewheelingly, and that's one bit, right? Pay huge attention to that buy-in and how the project will be perceived, and generating that buy-in comes really, I think, from that each individual person coming into the program. So each manager basically really tying it to something that they want to solve, and that conversation then really ends up either, you know, if that's a CEO level, COO, HR, whoever is the sponsor of a particular project. We came across these three roles most frequently, but whoever is in charge, right? They might be talking about, yes, we need to achieve a strategy, you know, the goals, or they're saying, yes, we need to, you know, our culture is very close, non-collaborative. We really want the culture to be more collaborative, or people need to trust each other more, and so on. So there's a lot of that, you know, these high-level conceptual stuff which is floating around those conversations. But in the first meeting or whenever we go, so either is that pitching bit or the coaching bit, we always connect it to that person and to those behaviors that they want to sort of get rid of, or they see as obstacles in their teams, or how they feel, right? So it's like, okay, you know, what's bothering you today in your team? That's usually one of the things that I ask, perhaps on the first meeting, or in the first meeting, either the pitching bit or the individual coaching bit. You know, what would you like to solve with this? You know, we many times say, yeah, you know, you're now into this program. I'm really wondering, what did you hear? You know, how can we make it useful? And then people start seeing the connection with their behaviors and the culture, and that's the most important thing, right? So that we don't feel, or that people don't feel as victims, or, you know, useless or powerless. That they actually see that they are accountable for that change. And I think that's one of the mindsets that is actually needed. Then the strengths come into place on how can I really change something, and it helps us in coaching and in changing that perspective.
Yeah, no, that's really, really good as we think about solving actual real problems in the organization. And strengths becomes a tool, much like engagement, becomes a tool then to change those numbers, and you can track those in various different ways, and to give that organization that value. Really appreciate that thought. I think we can continue. We've been fleshing that out a lot through a lot of our research, and I think we just need to continue to do that as well. You've in your methodology, you've created a platform for yourself that kind of helps walk customers from the very beginning through to make sure this thing stays sticky. And as you and I have spent some time talking about it, I think it has some key critical components that keep people interested. This is the hardest part, right? We just alluded to this a second ago. When it becomes a rock concert, the euphoria wears off. When it becomes a sustainable process, right? And when it becomes part of my workflow, then I'm thinking about it every day. talk a little bit about your methodologies or your ideas on maybe what you see as a differentiator in keeping the ball rolling, keeping things moving. What are you guys doing, or what have you found successful in working with these orgs? And you can show that how you do that if you want to do it that way. But what are the key components to keeping this thing rolling? What have you found successful?
So I think it starts. With the critical mass, right? So you have to have enough people in the program so that the ball really starts rolling, right? So a person being like, I don't know, one of the 600 managers, for example, or 1,000 managers in a company. We now work with a 5,000-6,000 people insurance company, and there's 600 people, managers, actually involved in this first phase. So we're operating with a group of 600 people at the same time. So 600 people, well, 300 people are in those, individual coaching sessions. So 300 people are part of that big ball, right? And that huge ball needs to start rolling, because if I'm one of the executive directors and 16 others are not seeing any of this, right, then the conversation is just, I'm again just part of the system, and I'm just like creating this disturbance, right, which is not accepted well in systems. So I think the first bit is that critical mass, right? Just get enough people so that there will be enough signals throughout the organization that this is something worthwhile, right? As many as possible. And then, yes, how can I run this kind of a program, right? We here in my team, we are 7 people, and we run companies with, as I said, there's like 600 at the moment, or 250 in another company, an electrical utility company, and so on. So how can we do this, right? The process, right, of all that is actually making, sort of simultaneous pushes to that huge ball. If we visualize it like this, now there's like, let's take that example. So there's 500 people or 600 people in the program, and how many people do we need to keep pushing that ball? And so it just doesn't stop in halfway somewhere, right? And what we do is what we created early in the beginning, a platform, E2Grow. It's a tech platform, right, which helps us in this. And for example, it really serves my efficiency sort of as a coach. That's one side of it, the coaching bit. Or for example, the strengths champion, right? The strengths champion, if I'm in that role and you're a coach perhaps, right? What I would do, I would create this kind of a structured approach. What are the milestones, or what are the interventions in this, that first goal, which is like 6-8 months away? What do we need to see there? What kind of changes in behaviors do we want to see? And these are really simple. Like usually we need 6 or 8 months just to see like 2 or 3 new things which pop up in those behaviors of every manager. And that's the key. Like, how can we increase the amount of managers that actually show the new behaviors, right? That's the goal. Not really, trying to make everyone a, I know, Gandhi, right? Or this new whatever enlightened leader, right? There are cases, right, that they actually do become that. But at the end, what we want to have is like at least, I don't know, 70 or 80% of those managers involved. They need to have at least 1 or 2 new, maybe a different weekly conversation, or a tool how to praise a person through strengths approach, or how to inspire a person, and so on. But to get there, it takes sort of structured way of that pushing the ball. Sort of enough people need to push that ball, and what we saw was we need, certain number of individual coaching sessions combined with the group sessions, so that all that sort of results in the change. And the tool that we use to support that is a platform that we built, because we tried doing it, through supporting managers through email and so on, and planning, for example, in OneNote and so on, but it just didn't work out. right? So I can only work with X number of coaches, coaches, right? If I'm just a single person, right? And then the question was, how can we multiply this and have, 20 or 30 that I can work with? At the moment, each of us can deal with about 30 coaches at the same time. And this can only be, we use technology to support this. And I can show a few things, so it will be more sort of, I think, tangible, so that you guys see what do we use.
Yeah,
Peter, be okay?
Well, yeah, why don't you bring that up while you're doing that? And
Okay.
I'll flip over to you on the video so folks can see that. While you're bringing that up, just go ahead and share your screen with it. One of the things I want you to really focus on, in the things that I cued in when I was looking through this, and just for folks that are listening and now watching, the Eat to Grow platform is a licensed product through Gallup. So just so folks know, was the emphasis on communication and kind of the proactive communication that goes on, I think, which is really important. So I don't want to miss that in here, because oftentimes we really struggle in these areas to kind of, so we do these initiatives, we get some training, and then how do we keep it going? And we know that through alerting and notifications and actions that are prompted and directed, I think you'll show us here kind of how that works to kind of keep the conversation rolling. So let me, why don't you just kind of run through it real quick here in the few minutes that we have, and we'll see what you guys are doing.
Yeah. So that's truly the key, right? How can I ensure that no one is left out, that no one is left behind, in the sense of, I just had a coaching session with a person, and then I'll have another one in a month, but that's not regular enough. It's like, you enroll in a fitness program and you want your personal trainer to be there for you like every day. If you do that just training once a month, nothing will change. So we increased that frequency of interactions, coachee, actually to a few times a week through the platform, through sort of semi-automated and manual approach of those interactions. So, for example, can you see this screen now?
Yeah. Yep. You bet. We're looking good.
So that's like, I'm logged in now into this is a demo account. We created it, and these are not real people. With the GDPR and so on, it's really a huge deal.
All legal. It's all legal.
Now it's legal. Yes. So we are ISO 27001 and so on. So me showing this on a global webcast, like a proper client, we would just our ISO 27001 would just disappear in a second. So that is a demo account. We tried to be as visual as possible. But so I log in now. Like this shows the dashboard for when I log in, and it really gives me a perspective of what my so that's a coach dashboard, right? This is showing me, my latest coaching session, which are my next coaching sessions, and when. Here's a team session. There's a few individual coaching sessions, what date, and so on. But what truly gives me some idea here is, there's a sort of smart system behind it, which is telling me what each of my coaches have or have not done yet. So that gives me like suggestions for what I could do with them to keep that sort of ongoing contact, so they don't forget about me. So there's some interesting insights there, right? This guy didn't send any praise, hadn't tried the mobile app yet or downloaded the mobile app yet, which is also part of the whole platform, and so on. But true value, I think, then comes, right? I now need to be able, as a coach, I need to deal with complexity of working with tens and tens of sort of coaches at the same time, right? If we want to get to that number of, having a couple of hundred people enrolled, like in sort of one class, right, or phase, that truly means that everyone in the coaching team has to have X amount of sort of X number of coaches enrolled. Now, to make me more efficient in that sense, I don't know, I'll just showcase a few things. Like I might be planning a team session, right? And then, one thing is that obviously all of my contacts, all of my people are in the whole in the platform, right? So I can see as a just as a regular user, as an associate in a company, right? I can see everyone's profiles. I can see insights about that person, right? What motivates this person, what demotivates this person, how to praise, what are the questions that will motivate this person, right? So it's like this book of people, right? It's like insights about people. But then, right, that would be that transparency thing, and how this, like, everyone in the company is involved and so on. All right, so it's not this initiative which is hidden. That serves the sort of buy-in of the organization, for example, really well. And now coming then to the efficiency of me as a coach, right? I might be planning a coaching session, a group session. I have 2 here already, so I'll just open one. So one of the benefits here, I just add those participants that are here. I can send them the invites, right? There's a big, so it's like the whole mailing system which goes out through this. I can include, I can personalize those emails and so on, even include gender, because some of the languages obviously have differences in so male and female sort of addressing and so on. But, regular stuff like print manager, which reduces hugely the workload that I need to sort of invest in preparation, right? The key is I don't really want to spend time in the sort of admin stuff. So I might have some documents in my organization which are sort of prepared, like a cover which is my design, and you can easily just add those PDFs there. And then it's easy. I'll take this one out because it's a bit. It's a 34-page report for everyone, so it might take longer, right? So this generates my all of the documents that I need, for example, for this team session, and it creates one PDF. So even for we just had a printout for 260 people, which we enrolled like a month ago, and so that was a few clicks was the only thing, what I needed sort of to. That I needed sort of to invest in generating that, in generating those materials, right? Let me just check. Did I? Can you still see the share?
No, it dropped off.
All right. Okay, I'll do this like this. No.
While you're Peter, while you're bringing that up, I will mention as folks are looking at that, each one of any of the Gallup in descriptions and info and all that stuff, we've worked with Peter from a licensing standpoint to make sure that is all in there. It's our most up-to-date information. It is sometimes, Peter, we get folks who will watch this and try to grab our IP and jam it into their stuff. We want to be careful in that, but I want to let folks know you've gone through Gallup to get that licensed and get it licensed properly. So it's cool to see.
It did, yes. So it's opening back. Let me just share it again. So essentially, that reduction of admin stuff was one of the key things that we wanted to sort of share or solve. But that was just the admin bit, right? You can get materials, sort of. You can have like someone create those materials, and that wouldn't really change how that person would how a person that we work with, the coaches, would actually change. Now that is a much bigger piece of creating those new routines and that keeping a meaningful conversation or interaction with them. So for example, I'll just show you, I don't know, my one of my coaches right here, one of my coaches, so that's the view that I have. It serves like I have all the history of what I have been doing with that person. And this is not just like a note-taking tool, right? If I'm now creating, I might add a new session, right? Planning a new session for, I don't know, a few days, in a few days, right? What really serves me well here as a coach, one of the coaches, right? Because here the key is I'm just one of the coaches, and there's like maybe 10, 20, 30 other coaches which actually are involved in pushing this whole snowball further, right? And this is what gives me some, ability to I can just use the predefined templates and the structure of how, what the result of, let's say, a coaching session 1, 2, 3, or a group session should be. So I just I select one of the predefined templates, which my sort of strengths champion designed earlier, and that's easily editable, right, for strengths champions. And so I can see, what do I need to focus on in my conversation with that person in particular stage, also based on on that person's goals coming, from the first conversation, and this gives me a really nice sort of it suggests tasks. The system suggests tasks for me, for that person, for me to give to that person in that particular stage where she is at, also based on the combination of her talents. So this, right, the suggested tasks are those ones that, they want to commit on something, but we try to steer the conversation to some commitments, obviously, in all of the coaching sessions. And here the suggested task serves us in those ideas, like what it is that I can give to our coachees. Now, the really well sort of versed coaches will do that. They can do that sort of on their own, right? But the key is in standardizing as well, towards which direction all of our whole team of coaches will now push that huge ball. And this is one of the keys in big organization, whenever we have more people involved in coaching, and that is in all organizations basically, which are more than a few hundred people big. It has to be really sort of steered, that whole sort of set of interventions, coaching session 1, 2, 3, individual, and so on. They have to be steered toward a particular goal, right? And this is what the strengths champion can sort of influence in the beginning. What are the goals? Is it personal productivity? Is it more on the collaborative side? Whatever the goals of the whole project were, this is what the project champion can sort of set up, right? Choose from the predefined or pre sort of created overarching goals, and then the suggested tasks will pop up, also based on the profile of this particular coachee, right? And there's a huge amount of coaching tips, like what can I ask this particular person, so that the question will be truly inspiring, and that will move her, as one of those big questions that we as coaches can pop up or can sort of surface, right? So it's like a tool to sort of to it's not just note taking, but it's more on that side of what are the tasks, what's the stuff that I can sort of provide, right? How can I keep that conversation going? And when I sort of add tasks, right, I can sort of tell when they're due, assign, by what time that person committed to do something, or even schedule it, like to get it after after 2 weeks, 2 weeks after the coaching session. So in essence, right, I as a coach come into the coaching session, I talk with the person, and then obviously always they commit to something. Those tasks get sort of keyed in here, and after the coaching session, I would just key those sort of tasks in, and also do a few drill tasks, sort of not just to what we sort of agreed on to, but also some drill tasks on using strengths, so they don't forget. And these tasks, they pop up in their mobile phones, in the Outlook, and so on, right? So they don't forget us.
Peter, I saw you had an Outlook plugin. What does that do? Why'd you need that?
Yeah, the Outlook plugin it's also tied to the whole platform idea, right? So I'll just share that as well. Will that work? I'll stop sharing this one. Screen share. So the idea behind the I'm not sure why it's not popping up. I'll do it like this. So the idea of the Outlook is basically just based. Can you see it now?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So the idea on the Outlook plugin is, whenever I'm writing an email or I receive an email, I would get profiles of the recipients or the senders, right? Right in here in the Outlook. So I'm looking at an email from this person, and I can see her top 5 here, and also all these insights, which are otherwise, which we can see in the obviously in the platform as well. But I can read about that here as well. How to motivate this person, how to avoid conflict with this person. It's not that we expect they would really read through this, right? But you might have those moments when you say, oh gosh, what should I answer to this person, right? And then this serves like a reminder, right? That person is an individual and different and so on. So it's more of a interrupter of the mind flow, right? So that my brain doesn't jump into the basement with my talents, and it's like it serves as that warning sign, sort of, right? Stop before you sort of overreact, perhaps. So that would be sort of one way of showing it, right? Or using it. There's also tasks, right? It reminds me of the tasks that I still need to do, which my coach assigned to me, and so on.
Do you guys have tracking on that to kind of see how people are using it and what kind of use it's getting? And then how do you get that past kind of the info security or the cybersecurity teams in big organizations to make sure that, it's safe and secure?
Yeah, there's always the compliance issue, right? And we always, when they see, okay, now we're dealing with data, personal data, and we're dealing with a system, we always need to go through basically through the whole piece of compliance checking. We do have so it's ISO 20001 compliant system. It's GDPR compliant, so they check into those processes before we involve, before we get assigned, or before we jump into the project. But yeah, the main thing. So we follow all these procedures that are sort of, also in that new regulation that are set up. That's one thing, and yeah, it just pulls all the data from our system, and that's usually enough. That's usually enough. And the Google app, the add-in is just it's published on the Windows Store, on the Microsoft Store anyway. So anyone basically with the if they're on 365 now, also on the Gmail or the Google apps, they can sort of download it and add it. And obviously, if they have an account, they can then just plug it in and use it.
You have a plugin for both Outlook and for Gmail. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, Gmail is now just to be released. The Outlook has been released. We've used it. We've been using it for a year almost. So it's for both. We also have an add-in for the Facebook for work, the workplace. So it ties into that as well. It's like a chat bot. It's just like a reminder of, I can just ask, okay, so, what talents does this person have whom I've just chatted through or seen a post on the workplace. So yeah, it pulls that data into the sort of awareness, right? Into that awareness. But just having, so it's not just like a directory of the strengths, right? There's much bigger pieces in these. What I'm showing now, it's in the tasks, right? And then all those interruption and nudges, which the system regularly sends out, in a sense of, if a person committed, he has like a difficult meeting coming up on Friday, then after coming out of that coaching session, I would set up very easily that task for Friday morning routine, which we just agreed to. So in a sense of, breathe 10 times before you go into that meeting, review all the other associates' profiles, right? Think what kind of question you will ask so you don't frustrate someone, right? So it's in that listening to the coachee and then planning those interruptions for that person is actually the key in building those new routines, replacing the old ones in sort of interaction, in face-to-face interaction with the person, and then setting those sort of reminders throughout the whole month before you see that person again, so that he or she really does something about it. And that's the key in creating truly creating that stickiness.
Peter, we just have a couple minutes left, kind of in the program time that we have. Maureen in the chat room had asked this question. When you think about your system and you think about how, yes, at the individual level, it has a tremendous amount of impact from keeping people on task. I can get top fives before I go into meetings. By the way, you gave me an idea to get my top five on a sticker and put it on my laptop lid. Because oftentimes I'm in meetings with my laptop open, right? And I could have my top five right there. I never thought about doing it on the laptop lid. But when you think about the L&D teams or HR groups, and you're selling this to them, is it the same? Is it the same? How do you go about convincing them? And I'm assuming in some of these organizations, they're coming to you to be on your system, right? You're setting up teams there. They're coming to your site. Real quick for Marines, how do you get buy-in, or what have you found successful to get buy-in from them?
Yeah, it's always like this. Either if you're inside the company, like inside the company as strength champion, or coming from outside, it's the same thing, right? You have to knock on that door, obviously, or you are in there. So the buy-in, I think, comes from there. This is what, now all of the efforts that you've invested in, now it will make sense, right? Because now people will actually start changing or what they do differently, or what they do daily. And we try to pull in that early days of setting up the project. Like, we try to understand what they've all invested in already, right? So if they have if managers went through, I don't know, a set of trainings on how to provide feedback, right? We would like to see those, what kind of sort of materials they received, or their yearly performance reviews or mid-year performance reviews, what those documents look like, so we can tie it into the when we are jumping in. Like, we will just we try to tell them, we're going to boost all of what you've done, and we're going to make it actually live, right? That will actually happen. We had a really good case where there was a company, they changed the value system. So, like, what are the true values in our culture? They've changed it. They invested like 2-3 years in the marketing sort of PR perspective. Everyone knew. So there was 95% of people knew what they were, but at the same time, 95% of people thought that the coworker is actually not living any of these, right? Which means no one was, right? But we actually completely changed that around through a set of these interventions, and we infuse them with strengths and so on. But I think the real question is, or the buy-in comes then from when we tell them, this is what you'll be able to do on your own. Because we're only 7, right? And we always take either our partners, which we now work with in several countries like UK, Ireland, France, Sweden, Puerto Rico, US, a few, right? So they are the ones that actually can help us serve the global corporations. But what we do tell the HR is, what we'll do is we'll take, your certified strengths coaches, your coaches, which you already have, and what we'll do is we'll help you streamline those efforts into one coherent set of what you'll do. So we always do, when we go into bigger company, it's always, let's align before each of those interventions. Like, we have 2-day train the trainer, just so that they can perform one coaching session, and then another one. So it's like this alignment that happens, all with the goal that we transfer that knowledge so that it becomes internal capacity of the company. So this is what they love, right? It's not we go in as an external people. We just help them build that capacity so they can run these programs on their own, because they're the ones that can structure these programs. They learn through, 6, 9, 12 months, 24 months of when we are working with them. But the end goal is always, like, you guys will need to run these kind of programs forever, right? Because this is what will ensure whatever new initiative comes in, or when new people come in, you'll have to be the one that trains them, not us. And I think that's a really different approach to any of the consultants, right, that come in, because they need to be the ones that actually live and make the change happen, and they have to live with that change for years, and maybe even do it again in 2 years' time. For some other initiative or for some other strategy and so on. So that's, I think, the biggest the buy-in that we get from HR.
Very cool. Peter, thanks for your time today. An hour goes very, very fast when we pull this together. Seems like we just started, but thanks for taking the time to do that. You gave us 3 nights in a row of your time, and I appreciate you doing that, staying up late for us. And thanks for spending time with us today. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me here.
You bet. We'll remind everyone to take full advantages of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strengths Center. Send us your questions or comments. If you got any of those, you can send us to an email, coaching@gallup.com. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this program, as well as all the past ones. They're on our coaches blog. Head out to coaching.gallup.com. Peter mentioned a couple times about being a Gallup certified strengths coach. You can see a list of all the courses that lead to that for Gallup certification. Courses.gallup.com if you want to get a complete list. If you want to stay up to date on all the webcasts that we have going on as well, you can find that gallup.eventbrite, B-R-I-T-E, by the way, gallup.eventbrite.com as well. If you want to join us on the Facebook group, you can do that, facebook.com/groups/called to coach, about 12,000 of us there. If you want to jump in for some conversations, Peter is part of that group. And if you had some questions, you could contact him through that group as well. I want to thank you for joining us today. Appreciate you listening. We'll be back with the next Called to Coach. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.